Parents charged me back rent for ages 0 to 18. When I got my first real job, calculated at $1,000 per month, while they gave it all to my sister to spend touring Europe for her modeling career. But karma hit them really hard. Sup Reddit. So my parents literally sent me an invoice for 18 years of back rent the week I got my first real job. Then gave every penny to my sister so she could travel Europe pretending to be a model. What followed was the most satisfying implosion I've ever witnessed. Buckle up because this gets wild. I'm Jake, 28 male, and this happened about 6 years ago, but the fallout is still giving me satisfaction to this day. My family dynamic was pretty standard suburban dysfunction. Two kids, parents who thought they were way more successful than they actually were, and the kind of favoritism that would make a psychology textbook blush. Let me paint you a picture of what growing up in my household was like, because context matters here. This wasn't just casual favoritism. This was systematic, calculated preference for one child over another that started before I could even form memories. My sister Brianna, 31 female, was the golden child from day one, literally. I've seen the baby photos, the video footage, the whole production. When she was born, my parents threw this massive party with a catered dinner, invited everyone they knew from work and church, had a professional photographer document the whole thing like it was a royal birth. There's a literal photo album dedicated just to her first month of life. Professional quality prints in a leather-bound book with gold lettering. When I came along 3 years later, my mom's friend Susan took some Polaroids at the hospital and called it a day. Those pictures ended up in a regular drugstore photo album that also contained random vacation shots and pictures of the family dog. No professional photographer, no catered celebration. Just a quiet weekend where relatives stopped by with casseroles and looked at me for about 5 minutes before going back to fawning over Brianna. Growing up, the difference was pretty obvious, but I didn't really question it until I was old enough to understand how screwed up it was. When you're 5 years old and your sister gets a pony-themed birthday party with an actual pony, while you get a cake from the grocery store and a few friends over to play in the backyard, you don't necessarily recognize the inequality. You just think that's how things are. Brianna got everything. Dance classes 3 times a week with a professional instructor who'd performed with some semi-famous company. Piano lessons with a teacher who charged $75 an hour. Art tutoring with some local artist who taught at the community college. Summer camps at places with pretentious names like Creative Arts Academy and Young Performers Workshop, where rich kids pretended to discover themselves while their parents paid thousands of dollars. I got the public library card and a basketball hoop in the driveway that Dad installed crooked because he was watching the playoffs instead of checking if it was level. The rim was tilted about 5 degrees to the left. Every shot I took had to compensate for that angle. When I asked Dad to fix it, he said it would teach me to adapt to imperfect conditions. When Brianna's dance studio changed the schedule and she couldn't make her preferred time slot, Dad personally went down there and negotiated with the owner to open up a private lesson slot just for her. The Christmas mornings were particularly brutal. I remember being maybe 7 or 8, coming downstairs to find this massive pile of presents for Brianna, probably 20 or 30 wrapped boxes of varying sizes, spread out under half the tree. My pile was maybe 5 boxes, tucked in the corner. I learned early not to compare, not to complain, because the one time I mentioned it seemed unfair. Mom launched into this lecture about being grateful for what I had and not being jealous of my sister. Brianna got a new bike every other year because she grew out of the previous one, even though she barely rode them. I rode the same bike from age 9 to age 15, fixing it myself when parts broke, spray painting it when the paint chipped, replacing the seat with one I bought from a garage sale with money I'd earned mowing lawns. For Brianna's 16th birthday, our parents went absolutely all out. They rented the entire pavilion at the country club, hired a professional DJ with a full light show, and sent out custom invitations on expensive cardstock with gold lettering. The party had a Hollywood theme with a red carpet, professional photographer, catered food from an upscale restaurant, a chocolate fountain, ice sculpture, and a 3-tier cake. Brianna wore a dress that cost more than my entire wardrobe. The final bill was probably north of $7,000. For my 16th, we went to Olive Garden on a Tuesday with my grandparents. I got the tour of Italy combo and a Best Buy gift card. $40. Someone had used 10 off it before giving it to me. Mom said they'd already spent their celebration budget on Brianna's extravaganza 6 months earlier. My grandpa noticed. After dinner, he pulled me aside and slipped me a $100 bill. Told me to buy myself something nice and not to tell my parents. That was when I realized other people could see it too. The favoritism was so obvious that my grandparents felt compelled to compensate for it. The financial favoritism was constant, systematic, and impossible to ignore once I started noticing it. It wasn't just big things like birthday parties or gifts. It was woven into every aspect of daily life in ways that added up to thousands of dollars over the years. New clothes? Brianna got these elaborate shopping trips where mom would take her to the mall. They'd hit 5 or 6 stores, come home with bags and bags of stuff from places like Nordstrom and Anthropology. Mom treated it like bonding time, like some sacred mother-daughter ritual. They'd get lunch at the food court, make a whole day of it. Brianna had a closet that looked like a boutique, organized by color and season, packed with clothes that still had tags on them. Meanwhile, I got whatever was on the clearance rack at Target. Mom would grab things in approximately my size without even asking if I liked them. Everything was practical, functional, boring. Basic jeans, plain t-shirts and bulk packs, clearance shoes that were usually last season's styles and colors nobody wanted. I wore the same winter coat for 4 years straight, even after it got a rip in the sleeve. Asked mom about a new one, and she said the ripped one still worked fine, and to stop being materialistic. School supplies were another constant reminder. Every August, Brianna got this whole production. They'd go to the fancy stationery store in the nice part of town, the one that sold those expensive Japanese pens and designer notebooks. She'd come home with bags full of color-coordinated supplies, matching binders, folders in every color of the rainbow, gel pens in about 30 different shades, fancy highlighters, stickers, organizational systems. Her backpack was always the latest style from some trendy brand. I got a $20 budget and a trip to Walmart. Had to make it stretch to cover everything. Notebooks, pens, pencils, folders, a calculator if I needed one. Nothing matched. Nothing was particularly nice quality. I reused the same backpack from 7th grade through 11th grade until the main zipper finally broke completely and wouldn't close anymore. Even then, I kept using it for a few more months, just being careful not to let anything fall out, before mom finally agreed to let me get a new one from the clearance section. Family vacations highlighted the inequality even more. These weren't just decisions about what to do. They were referendums on whose preferences mattered in our family. Brianna wanted to go to theme parks. We went to theme parks. Even though I got motion sickness on half the rides and spent most of each day sitting on benches feeling sick while everyone else had fun. One year, I really wanted to visit the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. I was maybe 13, going through this phase where I was obsessed with aerospace engineering. Read every book the library had about the space program, built model rockets in the backyard, spent hours watching documentaries about NASA. I found out the Smithsonian had this incredible aviation and space museum and begged my parents to consider it for our summer trip. Dad actually laughed when I suggested it, said it sounded boring for everyone else, and we needed to do something the whole family would enjoy. That year, we went to a beach resort that Brianna wanted to visit because some celebrity had posted photos from there on social media. We spent a week at a place where I got sunburned, hated the sand, didn't particularly enjoy swimming, and was generally miserable while Brianna posed for hundreds of photos to post online. The food thing was ridiculous too. Brianna was a picky eater, like dramatically picky. Claimed to be vegetarian one month, then vegan, then only eating organic, then on some weird juice cleanse diet she read about online. Every phase required special groceries, special meal prep, accommodations at every dinner. Mom would cook separate meals for her, buy expensive specialty ingredients, make sure there were options Brianna would eat. I mentioned once that I didn't really like mushrooms and got a lecture about being grateful and eating what was put in front of me. When I was going through a growth spurt in high school and mentioned I was always hungry, Dad told me to learn portion control instead of buying more groceries. But when Brianna decided she needed to eat 6 small meals a day for her metabolism, suddenly the kitchen was stocked with all her favorite snacks, and Mom was meal prepping her specific portions. But here's the thing. All that inequality, all that unfairness, it actually taught me something valuable that Brianna never learned. I adapted, became self-sufficient out of pure necessity. If I wanted something, I figured out how to get it myself, because I knew asking my parents was pointless, unless Brianna wanted it too. Started mowing lawns when I was 12, found an old push mower at a garage sale for $15, got it running with help from YouTube videos, and started going door to door in the neighborhood, asking if anyone needed their lawn cut. Charged $10 for a small yard, $15 for a bigger one. It was hard work, especially in the summer heat, but it was money in my pocket that nobody could take away. Expanded from there, shoveling driveways in winter, brutal work when it's 15 degrees out and you're pushing heavy snow at 6 in the morning before school. But it paid. Raking leaves in fall, helping people carry groceries, Washing cars. Any odd job anyone would pay me for, I did it. Built up a little reputation in the neighborhood as the kid who'd show up on time, do quality work, and not overcharge. By 14, I had a regular gig helping old Mr. Patterson with his landscaping business on weekends. Started out just doing the grunt work, hauling mulch, digging holes, pulling weeds in the hot sun. But Mr. Patterson was a good guy. Paid me cash, taught me the value of showing up on time and doing quality work, showed me how to edge a lawn properly and trim hedges so they looked professional. Those lessons stuck with me way more than anything my parents ever taught. Mr. Patterson would tell me stories about building his business from nothing, about the importance of reputation, and treating every job like it mattered. He'd been in landscaping for 40 years, had clients who'd been with him for decades because he showed up and did what he promised. Told me the secret to success wasn't being the smartest or having the most advantages. It was being reliable and doing quality work consistently. That hit different for a kid who was watching his sister get every advantage while contributing nothing. Here was this old man who'd built something real through actual effort, while my parents threw money at Brianna's endless parade of hobby phases and called it investing in her future. High school was where the difference really became painfully obvious. Brianna was constantly finding herself, which apparently meant changing her major interest every 3 to 6 months like clockwork. Each phase came with its own expensive startup costs and complete parental support. Brianna was constantly finding herself, which meant expensive new hobbies every few months. Theater came first. $300 a month for acting classes, $500 for professional headshots, audition costs. That lasted 4 months before she decided theater was too collaborative. Photography was next. Professional DSLR camera, lenses, tripod, lights, easily $2,000 worth of equipment. They set up a studio in our basement. She took maybe 100 photos before getting bored. Fashion design lasted longest at 7 months. Professional sewing machine for over 1,000. Racks of expensive fabric. Classes at the community college. She made 3 terrible items before quitting. All that equipment joined the camera in the abandoned dreams closet. Each phase cost thousands. Every time, my parents supported it fully, because Brianna was exploring her creative potential. Meanwhile, I was maintaining a 3.7 GPA while working 25 hours a week, saving for a college that nobody was going to help pay for. My weekday routine was brutal, but I made it work. Up at 6 for school, classes until 3, work from 4 to 9 most days, home by 9:30 to eat whatever leftovers were available, homework until midnight or later, sleep, repeat. Weekends were full shifts at the grocery store or landscaping jobs with Mr. Patterson when the weather was good, sometimes both. My parents never acknowledged how hard I was working, never said they were proud, never offered to reduce my hours so I could focus on school or have a social life. Just accepted that this was what I did while they financed Brianna's journey of self-discovery. The college situation highlighted everything perfectly. Brianna wanted expensive private art school in California, $42,000 a year. My parents scraped together the money through loans, retirement withdrawals, and credit cards. She lasted 1 semester before dropping out because art school was stifling her creativity. When I asked for help with the $5,000 gap between my merit deal and costs at State University, Dad laughed. Said I'd been working since 12 and should have saved enough. Never mind, I'd been buying my own everything while Brianna got an allowance. So I worked full-time summers, 60 to 70-hour weeks across multiple jobs. During school, 25 to 30 hours weekly while carrying a full course load. Took out loans for the rest. Graduated with $30,000 in debt and a logistics management degree that I'd chosen specifically for job placement rates. Landed the freight company job through sheer determination. 60 applications, 30 rejections, careful research on each company. $42,000 a year felt like winning the lottery after years of ramen noodles and minimum wage. That's when everything went sideways in the most spectacular way possible. About 2 months into my new job, riding high on finally having financial stability and my own place, I got a text from Mom. She wanted me to come over for Sunday dinner. Said they wanted to celebrate my successful launch into the professional world and that it had been too long since we'd all sat down together as a family. I should have known something was up immediately. My parents hadn't celebrated anything I'd done since maybe 8th grade when I made honor roll, and even that was just a quick good job over breakfast before they moved on to discussing Brianna's drama club audition. They'd never once acknowledged my college graduation, my job offer, my move into my own place. Nothing. So this sudden interest in celebrating my professional success was suspicious as hell. But I went anyway, mostly because I was feeling good about my life and figured maybe, finally, they'd recognize my achievements. Stupid optimistic thinking on my part. Showed up Sunday around 6 to find the whole family already assembled. Both parents sitting at the dining room table with this formal setup. The good dishes they only used for holidays, cloth napkins, even candles lit on the table. Brianna was there too, which was unusual for a family dinner since she usually avoided anything that might require her to contribute to conversation about other people. The vibe was immediately weird. Too formal, too quiet, too staged. Mom had made pot roast, which was her go-to meal for important occasions, or when she needed to butter someone up. Dad was wearing his serious discussion button-up shirt instead of his usual weekend casual wear. Everything felt choreographed, rehearsed, planned. We made it through about 15 minutes of small talk that felt forced and awkward. How was my new job going? Was the apartment working out okay? Did I need anything for the place? All surface-level questions that they'd never asked before and clearly didn't actually care about the answers to. They were building up to something, and the anticipation was making my stomach tight. Then Dad cleared his throat in that particular way he had when he was about to say something he'd practiced. He reached under his chair and pulled out a manila folder. Actual printed documents in a folder like he was about to present a business proposal. And that's when my stomach really dropped, because nothing good had ever come from my dad bringing paperwork to a family dinner. Son, your mother and I have been discussing your situation, he started, which was never a good opening. Now that you're a working professional with a stable income, we think it's time to address some outstanding obligations. I just stared at him. Outstanding obligations? I'd paid for my own car, my own insurance, my own college. What obligations could I possibly have? That's when he slid the folder across the table. Inside was a detailed spreadsheet going back 18 years. Every month of my life from birth to age 18, listed out in rows, with a column showing $1,000 next to each month. At the bottom was a total, $216,000. What is this? I asked, even though I was already getting a sick feeling about where this was going. This is an itemized statement of your living expenses from birth to age 18, Dad said, like he was explaining something perfectly reasonable. We've calculated the fair market value of housing, food, utilities, clothing, medical expenses, and education. We're estimating a conservative $1,000 per month. I looked at Mom, who was nodding along like this made perfect sense. Brianna was studying her nails, not meeting my eyes. You're billing me for being born? I said slowly. Not billing, Mom corrected quickly. We're asking you to contribute your fair share now that you're able. We invested a lot of money raising you, and now that you're financially stable, it's only fair that you help offset some of those costs. The spreadsheet was insane. It had categories like shelter provision and nutritional support and basic healthcare coverage. They'd literally calculated out what they'd spent keeping me alive, and were presenting it like a business expense report. Did you do this for Brianna? I asked, looking at my sister, who suddenly found the pot roast extremely interesting. Brianna's situation is different, Dad said. She's still finding her path. You found yours and are doing well for yourself. Translation. I had money now, and they wanted some of it. Brianna had never contributed anything, so there was nothing to collect. We're not asking for the full amount, Mom added quickly. We understand that would be unreasonable. We're thinking a payment plan. Maybe $300 a month until you've covered a significant portion? $300 a month, on top of my rent, student loans, car payment, insurance, groceries, and every other expense of being an actual adult. They wanted me to pay them $300 a month for the privilege of being raised. And if I don't? I asked. Dad's face hardened. Then we'll be very disappointed. Family takes care of family. We took care of you for 18 years. Now it's your turn to show some gratitude. I looked at the three of them. My parents sitting there like they'd just presented a completely reasonable business proposal. Brianna avoiding eye contact, because she knew exactly how messed up this was. That's when I noticed something. Where's Brianna's spreadsheet? I asked. She's 3 years older than me. By your math, she owes you $252,000. The silence was deafening. Like we said, Brianna's situation is different, Mom said carefully. How? She's pursuing her dreams. She needs our support right now. You have a stable job and can afford to contribute. There it was. The truth wrapped in a thin layer of parental manipulation. They saw me as their retirement investment, while Brianna remained the golden child who could do no wrong. I stood up and pushed the folder back across the table. I'm not paying you a single cent for raising me. That was your job as parents. You chose to have kids. I didn't choose to be born. Dad's face went red. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me? I cut him off. You mean the bare minimum required by law? Because from where I'm sitting, you did way more for Brianna than you ever did for me. She got dance classes in art school, and you covered her rent when she was my age. I worked my way through college while living on ramen, and you're trying to charge me rent retroactively for my childhood? You're being ungrateful, Mom said, her voice getting that tight, angry quality it always got when I didn't fall in line with their expectations. No, I'm being realistic, and my answer is no. Hard no. Not happening. I walked out while they were still sputtering protests. Brianna finally looked up as I left, and the guilt on her face told me everything I needed to know. She knew this was wrong but wasn't going to say anything because it benefited her. The calls started the next day. Dad left voicemails about responsibility and family values. Mom sent long text messages about how disappointed they were. Brianna stayed silent, which somehow felt worse than anything my parents were saying. I ignored all of it, blocked their numbers after the 15th call in 3 days. If they wanted to have a relationship with me, it would be on normal terms, not with me paying them protection money for my own childhood. Then things got really interesting. And by interesting, I mean criminal. About a week after I walked out of that disaster dinner, I got a call from my bank around midday. I was at work, in the middle of coordinating a shipment schedule, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but something made me answer. It was someone from the fraud prevention department at my bank. She introduced herself as Jennifer and explained that there'd been suspicious activity on my account that they needed to verify with me immediately. Someone had attempted to access my account using my social security number and claiming to be me, trying to set up an automatic recurring withdrawal. My blood went cold. What kind of withdrawal? A monthly automatic transfer of $300 to an external account. The request came in yesterday with your name, social security number, and date of birth, but several things flagged our fraud detection system. The signatures didn't match what we have on file. The request originated from an IP address and physical location different from your registered address. And frankly, the whole setup looked suspicious. We blocked the attempt pending verification, but you need to come in as soon as possible to secure your account. I left work early, told my boss there was a family emergency, which was technically true, and drove straight to the bank. Jennifer met me in a private office and showed me copies of the forms that had been submitted. They were attempting to set up automatic bill pay to my parents' account, claiming they had power of attorney and authorization to manage my finances for family business purposes. The forms had my name, my social security number, my account number, and what was supposed to be my signature authorizing the transfers. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close. Someone had clearly practiced copying my handwriting, but it wasn't quite right. The T in my last name was wrong, and I always do this specific loop on my first initial that wasn't there. Can you verify that you did not authorize these transfers? Jennifer asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear me say it officially. I absolutely did not. I have no idea who submitted these forms, but it wasn't me, and I never authorized anyone to access my account or set up any transfers. She nodded and started typing on her computer. I'm going to lock down your account with additional security protocols. You'll need to change all your passwords immediately, set up two-factor authentication, and we're putting alerts on everything. I also need to inform you that what was attempted here is identity theft and fraud. You should file a police report. Against my own family? The words came out before I could stop them. Jennifer looked up from her computer, her expression understanding but firm. Against whoever committed the fraud. Identity theft doesn't stop being illegal just because it's committed by family members. In fact, family fraud is more common than you might think, and often more severe because people hesitate to report it. I filed the police report that same afternoon. Sitting in the station, explaining to an officer that my parents had tried to steal from me, felt absolutely surreal. Like I'd stepped into some alternate reality where parents didn't just disappoint their kids, they actively committed crimes against them. The officer taking my report was maybe 45, looked tired, and didn't even blink when I explained the family connection. See this more than you'd think, he said, while typing up my statement. Family financial fraud, especially parents against adult children, usually happens when the parents see the kid as having money they feel entitled to. He took copies of all my documentation, the bank forms with the forged signature, screenshots of my account showing my actual signature for comparison, proof of my employment and address, showing I was nowhere near where the forms had been submitted. Everything. Made it all official, gave me a case number, and explained what would happen next. We'll investigate and determine if charges should be filed. Given the clear evidence of forging your signature and attempting to access your financial accounts without authorization, this is pretty straightforward fraud. Someone will be in contact with your parents to get their statement. You might want to prepare yourself. They're probably not going to react well to finding out you filed a police report. That was the understatement of the century. My parents lost their minds when the cops showed up at their door. Dad called me from the station, absolutely livid, demanding I drop the charges immediately. Charges that I hadn't even pressed, just filed a report like the bank told me to. You had us arrested, he shouted into the phone before I could even say hello. I filed a fraud report because you tried to steal from my bank account, I replied calmly. That's identity theft. That's illegal. What did you think would happen? We're your parents. That money should go to family. Then ask. Don't commit crimes. He hung up on me. Mom called an hour later crying, begging me to make this go away. I told her I'd filed a report, as required by my bank, and what happened next was up to the authorities. Then I hung up. They didn't get charged with anything serious. First offense, family situation. They agreed to financial counseling, but it scared them enough that the harassment stopped, for about 2 weeks. Then I found out what they'd really wanted the money for. My cousin Josh sent me screenshots from Brianna's social media. My sister was in Paris, then Rome, then Barcelona, living her best life touring Europe, staying in nice hotels, eating at restaurants that require reservations, posting aesthetic photos with captions about finding herself and embracing her journey. The trip was funded entirely by my parents, the same parents who couldn't help me with $5,000 for college, the same parents who were demanding I pay them back for my childhood. They'd taken the money they wanted from me and were giving it to Brianna to play tourist in Europe under the guise of pursuing her modeling career. The modeling career was news to me. Apparently, Brianna had decided she wanted to be a fashion model and needed to build her portfolio in European fashion capitals. At 31, with no modeling experience, no agency representation, and no actual plan beyond taking pretty pictures in front of landmarks. Josh kept sending updates. Brianna in front of the Eiffel Tower. Brianna at a cafe in Amsterdam. Brianna shopping in Milan. Each post talking about meetings with potential agencies and networking in the industry, but mostly just her eating expensive food and staying in hotels that cost more per night than my monthly rent. The trip lasted 6 weeks. I did rough math based on her posts, flights, accommodations, food, transportation, activities. My parents had probably dropped $15,000 to $20,000 on this fantasy vacation. Money they'd tried to steal from me because I owed them for being born. I screenshotted everything, saved every post, every caption, every detail. Didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I'd need evidence of their hypocrisy eventually. When Brianna got back, she posted this long, heartfelt message about how the trip had transformed her perspective and opened doors she never knew existed. The only door it opened was back to my parents' house, where she moved back in rent-free and unemployed. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Got a promotion at work, senior logistics coordinator with a 12% raise, moved into a better apartment, started actually building savings, paid down a chunk of my student loans. My boss recognized that I showed up, did quality work, and solved problems without drama. Turns out those are valuable skills in the professional world. 6 months after the Europe trip, my parents reached out again. This time it was Mom, using Brianna's phone because I had them blocked. She wanted to reconcile and suggested we meet for coffee to talk things through like adults. I agreed, mostly because I was curious what angle they'd try next. Met them at a neutral coffee shop. Dad was wearing his attempting to be friendly face. Mom looked tired. Brianna didn't come. Probably couldn't face me after her luxury vacation funded by money they'd tried to steal from me. They apologized for the misunderstanding with the bank account. They'd been stressed about finances and made a mistake in judgment. Never mind that attempting to commit fraud requires multiple deliberate steps. Filling out forms, forging signatures, submitting the request. That's not a stress mistake. That's planned theft. Then came the real reason for the meeting. They were in financial trouble. Dad's business, he ran a small insurance agency, was struggling. They'd taken out a loan to fund Brianna's Europe trip and were having trouble making payments. They'd put some expenses on credit cards and were drowning in interest. They needed help. We thought maybe you could loan us some money, Mom said carefully. Just to get through this rough patch. Maybe $5,000 to pay down the credit cards? We'll pay you back once things stabilize. The audacity was breathtaking. They'd tried to steal from me, use the money on my sister's vanity project, and now wanted me to bail them out of the consequences. No, I said simply. We're family, Dad said, like that magic word should override everything. You tried to commit fraud against your own son to fund a vacation for your daughter. That's not family. That's exploitation. We made a mistake, Mom pleaded. We admitted that. Can't you forgive us? Forgiving you and giving you money are two different things. I might forgive you eventually, but I'm never giving you a cent. We could lose the house, Dad said, and for the first time I heard genuine fear in his voice. The loan payments are killing us. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. Good. Maybe they should have thought about that before dropping 20 grand on Brianna's European fantasy vacation. Maybe they should have thought about it before trying to steal from me. Maybe they should have thought about it before spending my entire childhood making it clear I was worth less than my sister. Sounds like you need to budget better, I said, standing up. Maybe get some financial counseling. The court required it after the fraud incident, right? Might be worth actually attending. I left them sitting there. Dad called after me, but I didn't turn around. Done being their backup plan. Done being the responsible one who cleaned up their messes. Done being treated like a walking ATM with a family obligation. The next few months were rough for them, I heard through the family grapevine. My aunt kept me updated even though I didn't ask. They'd put the house up for sale. Couldn't keep up with payments. Dad's business was circling the drain. Turned out he was terrible at managing money, despite making a career of giving people financial advice. Mom had to get a part-time job at a department store, which she considered beneath her. Brianna moved back in with them during all this. No job, no prospects, just living off parents who couldn't afford to support themselves, let alone their 31-year-old daughter, who refused to accept that her modeling career wasn't going to happen. The house sold at a loss. They had to downsize to a small rental in a less desirable area. Dad's business eventually went under completely. Mom's part-time job became full-time out of necessity. Their entire life imploded because they'd been living beyond their means for years, using credit to maintain appearances they couldn't afford. And Brianna? She finally got a job at a call center. Hated every second of it, but didn't have a choice anymore. The gravy train had derailed and she was forced to join the real world with everyone else. Meanwhile, I got another promotion. Regional logistics manager. $75,000 a year plus bonuses. Bought a house. Small, but mine. 3 bedrooms, decent yard, in a neighborhood where people actually took care of their properties. First time in my life I had equity in something real. My aunt asked if I felt bad about not helping them. Told her I felt nothing. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. They'd prioritized Brianna over me for 30 years and then tried to literally steal from me to continue the pattern. Whatever consequences they faced were earned. But they're your parents, she said. Like that should mean something. They were my parents when they could have helped with college, I replied. They were my parents when they threw Brianna a $5,000 birthday party and gave me a $50 gift card. They were my parents when they tried to commit fraud. That word goes both ways. She didn't have an answer for that. 2 years after the coffee shop meeting, Dad reached out through LinkedIn of all places. Professional message about wanting to reconnect, asking if I had any job opportunities at my company. His insurance agency had failed completely, and he was looking for work in logistics. I didn't respond. Man had no logistics experience, no relevant skills, and a demonstrated history of terrible judgment. Even if he weren't my father, I wouldn't hire him. The fact that he was my father who tried to steal from me made it an even easier decision. Mom tried calling from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. Long voicemail about how they'd lost everything, how hard things were, how they'd made mistakes, but they were still my parents. And didn't I have any compassion? Said Brianna was struggling too, working a job she hated, still living with them because she couldn't afford her own place. I saved the voicemail, not out of sentiment, as evidence, because people like my parents don't change. They just try different approaches to get what they want, and I wanted documentation of every attempt. Last I heard, they're still in that rental. Dad's working retail now. Karma's funny that way. Mom's still at the department store. Brianna's still at the call center, still posting occasionally about her modeling dreams while living in her parents' spare bedroom at 33. As for me, just got engaged to an amazing woman who thinks my family situation is insane and completely supports my decision to keep them at a distance. We're looking at houses in a different city. Bigger, better schools, good job opportunities for both of us. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.